She only needed the job for 2 weeks. He hadn't spoken to anyone in months. But one silent evening, one question changed everything. Welcome back to Mr. Charles Stories, where every tale reveals more than just drama. It reveals truth. If you believe love can rise from unlikely moments, and that one choice can reshape a life, go ahead, like this video, subscribe to join the family, and stay until the end. Because this story isn't about chance. It's about what happens when silence speaks louder than words. The rain hadn't stopped all week. Naima Ellery tugged the collar of her black chef's coat higher as the elevator ascended to the top floor of the Stratton residences. She clutched the contract in her pocket. 2 weeks, private culinary service, non-disclosure agreement already signed. The pay was triple what she usually made at her pop-up events. She wasn't asking questions. The bell chimed at floor 62. The doors opened to a private lobby with black marble floors and matte gold accents. She stepped out, half expecting someone to greet her. Nothing. The unit's door was already ajar. Naima hesitated, then pushed it open slowly. The penthouse swallowed her in quiet. Warm, sleek lighting traced the ceilings. The smell of cedar and something faintly citrusy lingered in the air. She took a few steps forward and called out, "Hello?" A male voice echoed distantly from down the hallway. "Kitchen's on the left. I won't be needing dinner tonight. Just breakfast. You'll find everything you need." That was it. Naima blinked. Well then. She found the kitchen, ultra-modern stone counters, wall-to-wall glass with a view of the Sound, sub-zero fridge, stocked, herbs in small pots, premium everything, but no human warmth. She prepped what she could, breakfast ingredients, fresh bread rising. She cleaned silently. Still no sign of the client. She only knew his name from the file, Colden Vale. Tech investor, billionaire, infamously private. According to a quick Google search her friend did the night before, Colden hadn't given a single public interview in 6 years. His last girlfriend had been spotted with him at a fashion gala 3 years ago. Nothing since. As she wiped down the counters, Naima whispered, "Great. I'm working for a rich ghost." The next morning, she arrived at 6 sharp. He was already in the kitchen, seated at the far end of the bar, reading from a matte black tablet, sleeves rolled up. Navy button-down, hair still wet from the shower. A mug of untouched coffee in front of him. Naima nearly jumped. "Good morning," she said softly, pulling her bag off her shoulder. He looked up. His eyes were sharp, ice grey. His gaze didn't wander. He studied. She cleared her throat. "I'll get started." He gave a small nod and returned to his screen. She began making his breakfast. Soft scrambled eggs, roasted tomatoes, whole grain toast with pear preserves. He said nothing, but he watched her through glances, as if memorizing how she held the knife, how she sliced, stirred, moved. When she plated his dish and set it gently in front of him, she caught his eyes again. "Looks good," he said. His voice was calm, deep, but detached. "Thank you," Naima replied. He ate, silently, deliberate. No comments, no complaints. She left an hour later, without another word between them. The same pattern repeated. Day 2, day 3. He'd be there, waiting or arriving shortly after. Always quiet. Always reading. Always present, but distant. Naima worked with quiet efficiency. She played no music, kept her phone on silent, focused. She told herself it didn't matter. This was a paycheck, nothing more. But on the 6th day, something shifted. She found herself looking forward to seeing if he'd be there, wondering what he was reading, whether he liked his coffee black out of preference or habit. And that morning, he didn't read. He simply sat, watching her with quiet intensity. As she mixed batter for lemon ricotta pancakes, she asked, "Would you prefer maple syrup or berry compote?" He paused, then replied, "You choose." Naima hesitated. "I'd pick the berry." Then that, a pause. "Do you always do that?" He added. She looked up. What? Default to what the other person wants. Her hand stilled over the stove. "No," she answered. Not always. Only when I think the other person might not know what they need. He watched her longer than usual after that. That night, she stayed later than usual. The agency had added a dinner service to the request. She plated roasted halibut with herbed potatoes and asparagus. By the time she cleaned up and finished prepping for the next day, the rain was pelting the windows. She debated calling a car. Then, she heard it. Footsteps. She turned and saw him. No tablet, no phone. Just him. Colden stood near the sliding glass balcony doors, wine glass in hand, dress shirt open at the neck. "You can use the driver," he said. "It's late." Naima nodded. "Thank you." She moved to pack her things. He spoke again. "Do you believe silence is safe, or just lonely?" She froze. His voice was lower now. Waited. Naima turned slowly. "Depends. Is the silence your choice?" He didn't smile. But something flickered in his eyes. "Sometimes I wonder if I stopped talking to the world, or if the world stopped listening." Naima walked toward him, cautious but steady. "You've built walls, high ones. They kept me from falling apart." She stood beside him. The city lights twinkled below them, blurred by rain. "Some people don't want to be saved," she said. "They just want someone to wait with them." Colden looked at her then, really looked. His breath caught. And for the first time in years, so did hers. Naima wasn't supposed to feel anything. She was a temporary hire, a professional, just a chef contracted to cook, clean, and keep quiet. But that moment on the balcony lingered, the way Colden had looked at her, not like a billionaire sizing up a staffer, but like a man watching something familiar become important again. When she got home that night, she lay awake in bed longer than usual. Not because he said much, but because of what he didn't say, and because she didn't want to stop wondering what was behind that silence. The next morning, she returned earlier than usual. The air was crisper. Rain had paused. The sky above Seattle, though grey, offered a quiet stillness. She stepped into the penthouse and froze. Colden was already in the kitchen, in sweatpants and a plain black tee, barefoot, hair slightly tousled. No suit, no tablet. Just him, leaning against the counter with a mug in hand. "Morning," he said before she could. "Morning," she replied cautiously. "You slept okay?" he asked. The question caught her off guard. She offered a careful smile. "Didn't expect you to ask that." He shrugged. "Didn't expect you to answer." That was their rhythm now. Subtle, measured, honest. She pulled ingredients from the fridge. "Omelette today." He gave the smallest nod. "Surprise me." As she chopped vegetables, he moved around the kitchen with quiet energy. He refilled her glass of water without asking. He handed her a clean towel when she reached for one. It wasn't romantic, not yet. But something had shifted. The air felt aware. When she plated the omelette and slid it toward him, Colden didn't touch his fork immediately. Instead, he looked at her. That steady gaze that stripped noise from the world. "Do you always move like this?" he asked. "Like what?" "Like someone who's trying not to take up space." Naima paused. "I've worked in homes where being invisible was the expectation." He nodded slowly. "But not here." That silence again. Comfortable, not cold. By the end of the day, Naima had cooked 3 meals, rearranged the spice cabinet, and left a tray of prepped mason jars in the fridge labeled for each morning. She was lacing up her boots by the door when Colden appeared again. His expression was unreadable, but his hands were in his pockets, a sign, she was learning, that he was either nervous or thinking. "Do you ever cook for yourself?" he asked. "Not often. I usually just eat scraps." He frowned. "That sounds sad." She laughed softly. "It's not. It's efficient." He hesitated. "Would you eat here tonight?" Naima blinked. "With you?" He nodded. No explanation, no pressure, just a quiet offer. She hesitated. "Are you sure? I wouldn't have asked if I wasn't." She stayed. They ate at the kitchen bar, facing one another. No wine, just grilled fish, citrus rice, and sautéed kale. Conversation came in slow drops. He told her about growing up in a military family, always moving, never settling. She told him about her grandmother's kitchen, the smell of cinnamon and cardamom on Sundays. He didn't smile often, but when he did, it softened his entire face. It made him look younger, warmer, human. After they cleared the plates, Naima stood at the sink, rinsing, cold and dried. Neither said much, but their arms brushed once. Then again, when she turned to say thank you, her words caught, because he was close, inches away, watching her. His voice was low. You make silence feel safe. Naima's breath shook. You don't scare me. He nodded. But I scare myself. And then, just once, his hand brushed hers. Fingers lingered. Not demanding, not rushing, as if asking for permission, not assuming it. She didn't pull away. The next evening, it rained hard again. Naima arrived soaked beneath her coat, hair frizzing at the edges. Colden met her at the door with a towel. You could have cancelled, he said. I don't cancel on people who show up for their own breakfast. That made him laugh. Not a full laugh, but a softened smirk that lit his face like dawn through heavy blinds. She cooked barefoot that night. He dimmed the lights. Soft jazz played from a corner speaker. They didn't plan it. They didn't choreograph it. It just happened. A look became a step. A step became a touch. His fingers at the side of her face. Her hand at the collar of his shirt. Their mouths met like a question neither had dared ask out loud. Not hungry, not desperate, but gentle, exploring, slow. They didn't make it to his bedroom. The couch saw it all. Her laugh when he kissed behind her knee. His gasp when she whispered his name like she had owned it forever. No drama, no declarations, just presence. For once, they weren't alone in the room because they had chosen to be there, together. When she woke the next morning, the couch was cold. He was gone. His bedroom door was closed. No note on the counter. No sound. Her things were still where she left them. She dressed quietly, brushed her hair in the guest bathroom, looked at herself in the mirror, and left. No goodbye. No questions. She wasn't going to beg anyone to stay. Naima didn't cry. She didn't sit in her car and spiral. She didn't call her best friend or write about it in some journal. She just drove home in silence. The city hadn't changed. The lights still flickered on corners. Buses still hissed against wet asphalt. People still walked quickly under umbrellas, like they had somewhere warm to be. But Naima felt quieter, hollow, but not hurt. More like confirmed. In her small apartment in Westlake, she peeled off her damp coat and stared at the empty space beside her kitchen counter. The last meal she'd cooked for herself was 3 days ago. It was still in the fridge, half untouched. She sat on the couch, still wearing her socks, and stared at her phone. There were no missed calls, no texts. She hadn't expected any. She replayed his voice in her mind. You make silence feel safe, but I scare myself. She had answered with her body, her openness, her presence. He had answered with distance. The next morning, she woke to the sound of rain tapping at her window. She let it fall, then got up, tied her apron, poured herself some orange juice, and started chopping onions, not for Colden Vale, not for a client, for herself. She sautéed garlic and bell peppers, added potatoes, fried 2 eggs, sat down with a cloth napkin and ate every bite. There was no silence now, only clarity. Colden didn't know why he left so fast. He woke at 4:37 a.m., heart racing, her breath still warm against his chest, her leg still tucked beneath his, and he panicked, not because she was next to him, but because something in him wanted her to stay. That wasn't part of the plan. He hadn't let anyone that close since his engagement to Elaine ended 5 years ago. That breakup wasn't scandalous. It wasn't messy. It was just empty. The kind where 2 people realize they built their intimacy on schedule, not substance. Elaine had once said, "You don't let people love you, Colden. You just let them orbit." Naima had never even tried to orbit. She simply existed in his space. Not asking, not begging, just being. And that was more dangerous than anything. So he slipped out of bed, walked quietly across the penthouse, and shut himself in his study. He didn't come out until hours after she left. By then, she was gone, and his silence had spoken for him. He tried to shake it off, went back to his routine. He met with his legal team to discuss a new property investment, reviewed plans for a small tech accelerator he was funding downtown, sat through 2 board calls, but nothing stuck. Everything felt numb. That night, he went into the kitchen and reached for the glass pitcher of lemon water Naima used to leave on the counter. It was empty. She wasn't coming back. The agency had confirmed her contract ended. There was no renewal request, no post-shift feedback submitted, no invoice submitted yet either. He had expected her to at least ask about payment. She didn't. That bothered him. Naima filled her week with food. She joined her friend Kobe at a fusion brunch event, rolling lumpia beside a Vietnamese-Cuban stall. She taught a kids' cooking class at a local shelter on Thursday. On Saturday, she helped prep for a soul food pop-up with a local black farmers collective. She laughed. She cooked. She kept moving. But every time someone said penthouse, she felt it in her stomach. She hadn't told anyone what happened. Not even her cousin Amaya, who would have had 100 opinions and probably offered to accidentally send Colden a flaming hot tray of gumbo. It wasn't worth it. What they shared was real for her. But that didn't mean it had to be permanent. Sometimes people pass through your life to remind you what your boundaries are. Sometimes it only takes one night. Colden walked through his own penthouse like it was a museum. He ordered food, left most of it untouched. He stayed up late, worked longer hours. He ignored the jazz playlist Naima once connected to his speaker. He didn't step out on the balcony. The silence was different now. It wasn't safe. It wasn't lonely either. It was guilty. He didn't want to feel it. But it sat with him anyway. 1 week passed. Then 2. Then Naima stopped checking her phone entirely. And Colden couldn't stop checking the door every time the elevator chimed. On the 14th day, he walked into the kitchen at 6:30 a.m., still half asleep, and opened the fridge. He reached for the almond milk, poured it into a glass, took 1 sip and frowned. It had expired. He opened the side drawer for lemons. None. Then he realized there was no prepped fruit tray, no labeled jars of overnight oats, no rosemary tucked into the napkin tray. His kitchen had gone back to being stocked, but not alive. And for the first time, Colden felt it. Not hunger, not regret. Loss. Naima didn't blame him, but she'd stopped making space for him. She blocked the number from the agency on her phone, not because she was angry, but because she didn't want to be tempted by their next offer. Colden Vale had his world. He'd built it out of glass and silence. She had stepped in for a moment and brought color, heat, flavor. But he had closed the door when it mattered, so she locked that chapter away. But fate didn't care about plans, and on a cool, bright Tuesday in April, everything would change, because Naima's hands had begun to tremble again. Not from hurt, but from something she hadn't expected, something no night, no kiss, no silence could undo. The test was positive, and this time, it wasn't just her life that would be affected. It was his too. He just didn't know it yet. The clinic was quiet, not the kind of sterile silence she hated. This was softer, calmer. A young nurse with purple braids and glittery nail polish had smiled gently when she handed Naima the cup. No judgment, just warmth. Naima sat now in the consultation room, back straight, hands folded in her lap. She knew, even before the nurse walked in, even before the results. She knew. Because her body had started whispering things her mind had tried to ignore. Missed period, fatigue, sore breasts. She'd blamed the stress, the double shifts, the emotional drain of Colden's disappearance. But deep down, she had felt the shift. Her body had changed. Something had changed. The nurse walked in holding a clipboard, soft-voiced. "Naima?" "You're pregnant." Naima didn't blink, didn't ask how far along, didn't ask what came next. She nodded once. "Okay." The nurse tilted her head gently. "Do you want to talk through your options?" Naima gave a small smile. "I already have." She wasn't confused or scared. She wasn't desperate. She was awake, as if her body had made a decision and her heart was catching up. She walked out of the clinic and didn't cry. She didn't text Colden, didn't call the agency, didn't question the next step. Instead, she walked 3 blocks in the drizzle to her favorite bakery in Belltown and ordered a slice of peach crumble and a ginger tea, sat by the window, watched the world move. Seattle was beautiful that day, grey but glowing. She rubbed her belly just once and whispered under her breath, "I got you." Back in her apartment, Naima pulled out her meal planner notebook and began adjusting her weekly prep. Less caffeine, more greens. She'd cut back on work hours, take fewer late shifts, and cancel the next rooftop event. The smell of shrimp was already starting to make her stomach churn. She texted her landlord about the faulty heater and started researching doula services. It wasn't about panic. It was about peace. This baby would be raised in warmth. Colden was pacing. For a man who ran 4 companies and managed $600 million in venture holdings, pacing shouldn't have been part of his routine. But every evening since Naima left, he found himself doing exactly that, walking the length of his penthouse like a man trapped in his own success. He kept remembering the way she looked the night she left, peaceful, graceful, soft, and the sound of her last word in the doorway, "Good night," not goodbye, just good night. He wanted to believe that meant she'd return, but she didn't. He checked the agency logs again. Nothing. He called the culinary director, asked casually if she'd booked another client. "I'm not sure," the director replied. Naima turned down 2 premium placements last week, said she was scaling back. That word again, scaling back, like she didn't need any of this anymore, like she had made her decision. In his study, Colden stared at his phone. He had no number for her, no last name in the records. The agency had cleared her identity from his dashboard. All he had was her face, her voice, her presence. Gone. Naima stood at the mirror in her bedroom and touched her belly again. Nothing showed yet, but she felt it, and it centered her in a way nothing ever had. For years she'd worried about timing, about stability, about being ready. But this didn't feel like chaos. It felt like clarity. She could do this. She would do this. The next morning, she woke early and opened her windows. The air was clean. She wrote in her notebook, "No one needs to chase a man who walked away, especially when life just gave you someone who'll walk with you." In another part of the city, Colden sat in his car outside a charity gala he'd donated $250,000 to sponsor. He didn't want to go in. He didn't want to shake hands or smile for cameras or pretend his world hadn't tilted, because it had. He just didn't know why yet. Across town, Naima put on her softest sweater and walked into her kitchen with purpose. She didn't know if she'd raise this child alone. She didn't know if Colden would ever find out, but she knew this. She would never beg anyone to care. And that alone changed everything. If this story moved you, don't scroll past. Hit the like button and subscribe. Now tell us in the comments. If you were Naima, would you reach out to Colden? Or protect your peace and raise the baby without him? Sometimes choosing yourself isn't selfish. It's the beginning of everything new. Colden Vale had built his entire empire on control, controlling markets, controlling narratives, controlling how much people knew and when they knew it. But control didn't matter when a woman walked away and didn't leave breadcrumbs. He wasn't used to being dismissed without drama, without a request, without a fight. And Naima hadn't asked him for a single thing, not once. That made it worse, because it meant she hadn't needed him. And somewhere deep in his chest, that stung more than rejection ever could. He started visiting places he had no business visiting: farmers' markets, community food fairs, pop-up brunch events in downtown lofts. Every time, he told himself he was exploring investment opportunities in culinary innovation. But the truth, he was hoping to see her. He needed to know that she was okay. And more than that, he needed to see if she ever thought about him. Meanwhile, Naima's life became a rhythm of care. She did her own grocery runs now with more intentionality. She stopped skipping meals. She tracked her vitamins. She whispered to the growing life inside her, even when she wasn't sure the baby could hear. Her body had become unfamiliar, but her focus had never been clearer. She cooked slower, moved with awareness, smelled things differently. She swore she could taste emotions in food now: sweetness when she was hopeful, bitterness on her tired days. Still no calls, still no messages. She didn't expect any. But some nights, she lay on her side and placed both hands on her belly, asking softly, "Will I ever have to explain why he's not around?" Colden's assistant, Trey, noticed the change. "You've got 3 missed calls from Maya Holdings," he reminded Colden one afternoon. "And you were supposed to finalize the robotics fund with Cambridge last week." Colden rubbed his eyes. "I'll get to it. You're not usually the one getting to things. You're the one people scramble for." "You okay?" Colden didn't respond. Trey tried again. "Is this about the woman from the penthouse contract?" Colden's stare lifted slowly. "What do you know?" Trey shrugged. "Only that you haven't cooked since she left, and you haven't been yourself since then either." Colden nodded once. "Then you know enough. Naima's friend Kobe finally called her out. You've got that glow, girl, and don't say it's from your beet salad." Naima smiled. "It's not a glow, it's just peace." Kobe tilted her head. "That peace got a heartbeat." Naima hesitated. Then she nodded. Kobe let out a soft exhale. "Does he know?" Naima looked down. "No. You want him to?" "I don't know what I want from him," she admitted. "I just know I don't want to ask." Colden returned to the agency one last time, but this time he didn't use an alias or ask his team to make the inquiry. He went himself, walked into the clean, glass-paneled office on Madison Street, took off his sunglasses, and asked the manager directly, "Do you have contact details for Naima Ellery?" The woman behind the desk froze. "We don't give out that kind of information to clients, even if you're—" "I know the policy," Colden cut in. "I also know I'm the reason she hasn't been paid yet." The woman blinked. "What?" "I delayed her final invoice," he admitted, "to see if she'd reach out. She didn't." The woman's jaw dropped slightly. "That's manipulative." Colden didn't flinch. "It was wrong. I'm here to fix it." She studied him carefully. Naima's phone buzzed 3 hours later. It was a deposit alert. $14,000. Memo. Final contract plus withheld bonus. No note. No message. Just the money. She sat on the edge of her bed staring at the screen. He had found her. Without contacting her. She should have felt angry, but she didn't. She felt seen, respected, and yet it didn't change her mind. She wasn't inviting him in. Not yet. Across the city, Colden stood in front of his study window, sipping a cup of tea he didn't want. The city pulsed below. He didn't care about the money. He just wanted her to know he hadn't forgotten. He wanted her to see, maybe not now, but one day, that he was still here, still thinking, still learning what it meant to show up when it counted. Naima folded baby clothes that night with careful fingers. Each item, a cotton onesie, a tiny cap, booties soft as clouds, carried new meaning. She wasn't dressing someone imaginary anymore. She was preparing for a life she'd protect at all costs. And that included protecting her peace, even from a man she once shared her whole self with, for one unforgettable night. Colden didn't do brunch. He avoided public appearances unless absolutely necessary. Crowds drained him. Photos made him flinch. Most people around him wanted something: access, favors, proximity to money. But this invite was different. His friend Lena was being honored for her non-profit's milestone, and she'd personally requested his presence. He owed her. She'd been one of the only people who stood by him after Elaine walked away. So, he showed up. Button-down shirt, navy blazer, no tie, low profile. The venue was a converted greenhouse on the edge of downtown, floor-to-ceiling glass, trailing ivy, sunlight pouring in through the atrium. He scanned the room once, quietly, then took his seat at the table marked Community Impact Partners. His plan was to smile politely, eat discreetly, and disappear before dessert. That plan didn't last long. 15 minutes in, a young MC with wild curls and a wide grin took the mic. And now, we're thrilled to spotlight a chef who's redefining what it means to feed people with purpose. She's a mentor, a culture bearer, and she makes the best fried okra this side of the state line. Please welcome Naima Ellery. Colden froze. He didn't think he heard correctly, but then, there she was. Hair pulled back in a soft bun, simple gold hoops, a sage-green wrap dress hugging her gently rounded belly. Pregnant, radiant, laughing lightly as she stepped up to the mic. Colden sat forward, his entire body alert. He wasn't imagining it. That was her. Naima cleared her throat, smiling shyly. I didn't expect to speak today, she began, but I'm honored. Feeding people is my love language, and I believe food can be medicine, physical, emotional, and generational. When we serve each other, we heal. Colden's chest tightened. She was different, not in appearance, but in presence. She was fuller, steadier, and unmistakably glowing. When she stepped down and the crowd applauded, he clapped too, but softly, like if he made too much noise, the moment would vanish. During the buffet-style meal, Colden hovered, close enough to watch, far enough not to interrupt. She laughed with an older woman, hugged a few children, took a photo with her mentor. Then she walked to the refreshment table, rubbing her back with one hand. Pregnancy fatigue, he guessed. And that's when she saw him. Their eyes met over the lemonade pitcher. She didn't flinch, didn't gasp, just looked at him, long, steady, calm, then turned to pour herself a glass. Colden walked over slowly. He wasn't sure what he was going to say. She made it easy. You clean up well, she said, sipping slowly. He smiled gently. You are glowing. Naima shrugged. Blame the baby. She has taste. His heart skipped. Naima nodded. Confirmed last week. He breathed once. Congratulations. She tilted her head. You didn't think I'd tell you? He looked down. I thought, maybe you wouldn't want to. I didn't. She paused. But I didn't want to hide either. A beat passed. Colden asked softly, Are you okay? She met his eyes. More than okay. And the baby. Strong. Healthy. Growing. He nodded again. I don't want to interrupt your life. You already did. Her voice wasn't cruel. Just honest. But that's not the point, she added. You're here now. That says something. They stood in silence again. This time, not uncomfortable, just complicated. Then she offered, There's an empty seat at our table. If you want to sit. He blinked. You'd let me. Naima glanced toward the long table of women and families. I don't invite chaos, she said, but I do make room for people willing to act right. Colden gave a small nod. I'll act right. And for the first time in weeks, Naima smiled fully. He sat beside her, didn't touch, didn't dominate the conversation. He listened, watched how she interacted with everyone, grounded, present, joyful. And every time she laughed, the knot in his chest loosened. After the event, as the crowd thinned, Naima slipped on her coat. She turned to him. I'm not promising anything, she said. I'm not asking, he replied. They stood there a second longer. Then she pulled her scarf tight and walked toward her rideshare. Before she got in, she turned back. You have my number now. He nodded. I won't misuse it. Good. Then she was gone. And for the first time since their night together, Colden didn't feel lost. He felt given a chance. not to fix things, but to grow into something real. Colden didn't call Naima that night. He didn't text the next morning either. He knew better now. She'd given him a thread, not an open door, and he wasn't about to pull too hard and ruin it. So he waited a full 48 hours. On the third day, around 7:32 p.m., he typed the message, "Hi, if you're open to it, I'd like to bring something for the baby. Nothing big, no expectations, just an offering." He stared at the blinking cursor for a minute, then hit send. Naima saw the message while folding laundry. She didn't respond right away. She finished stacking the baby clothes, hung a few wraps, opened her window for fresh air. Then she replied, "If you're going to bring anything, bring fruit. Pineapple, if you can find it ripe." 2 hours later, there was a soft knock on her door. Colden stood there in dark jeans, a cream knit sweater, and a paper bag from an organic grocer in his arms. She opened the door but didn't invite him in. Not yet. He held up the bag. "I brought 3 kinds. Fresh cut pineapple, a whole one in case you want to roast it, and dried slices for snacks." Naima took the bag and inspected it. "No citrus?" He shook his head. "I read pineapple and oranges together can be too acidic during pregnancy. Might trigger heartburn." She raised a brow. "You read?" He nodded. "Don't act surprised." "I don't like not knowing what I'm walking into." Naima stepped back slightly. "You're not walking into anything. You're standing at the edge." But her tone wasn't cold. It was fair, measured, real. She let him in. Briefly, he stood near the doorway while she moved to the kitchen. "You want something to drink?" she asked. "Water's fine." She poured it. No ice, no lemon. Handed it over. He sipped, then said, "You're doing well." Naima paused. "You sound surprised." "I'm not. I'm relieved." He let that sit before adding, "I wasn't sure what seeing you would do to me." She glanced at him. "What did it do?" Colden looked around her apartment, warm lighting, a half-finished. Painting on an easel, a small pair of baby shoes on the coffee table. "It reminded me that peace is loud, and I've lived too long in quiet that meant nothing." They talked. Nothing deep. Nothing fragile. She asked about his company. He asked about her clients. She mentioned a new contract cooking for a birth doula collective. He smiled and said, "That suits you." Before he left, she handed him a container of her lemon ginger lentil soup. "Since you don't cook for yourself." Colden took it like an offering from a sacred altar. "Thank you." "Don't thank me yet," she replied. "You still need to earn the second batch." He smiled at that. After he left, Naima sat quietly on her couch. She didn't overthink it, didn't analyze the visit. But as her hand drifted to her belly, she whispered, "That was okay." The baby kicked once, gentle, and Naima took it as a yes. Colden didn't miss a week. He started small. Every Sunday evening he dropped off groceries, fruit, grain, fresh herbs, herbal teas. Never stayed long, never assumed entry. Sometimes she invited him in, sometimes she didn't. When she did, they sat at the table and talked about neutral things, traffic patterns, childhood foods, weird neighbors. But every conversation chipped away at something invisible, a wall she'd built, a fear he hadn't known how to name. On the 4th visit, Naima sat down slowly, cradling her back. Colden moved toward her instinctively. "Can I?" She nodded. He pressed his hand gently to her lower back, found the tense muscle, and began rubbing slow, careful circles. Naima closed her eyes. She didn't moan, didn't lean in, but she allowed it. That was more intimate than any kiss. "Thank you," she whispered after a while. "You're welcome." She opened her eyes. "Why are you really doing this?" Colden didn't lie. "Because when I walked away, I thought I was protecting myself. But now, I realize I was walking away from the only honest moment I've had in years." Naima didn't respond right away. Then she said, "I don't trust Easy." "I'm not asking you to." "What are you asking?" Colden looked at her, voice quiet. "Let me show up." "That's it." Naima studied his face and nodded once. Later that night, she texted him 2 simple words: "Pineapple's good." Colden had always associated effort with performance. In business, effort produced results. In relationships, at least the ones he had before, it produced leverage. He gave, they praised. He withdrew, they panicked. But this wasn't that. Naima didn't ask for attention. She didn't flatter. And she never once used the baby as bait. Everything she gave was deliberate, small, real, and everything she withheld was a boundary he knew better than to cross. So he learned to serve quietly. No grand gestures, no sudden declarations, just showing up. It became their rhythm. Wednesday drop-offs, Saturday walks, Sunday soup and conversation if invited. Colden never assumed the couch was his, never touched anything that wasn't handed to him. Sometimes they sat in silence while Naima knit baby socks or scrolled through birth articles on her iPad. Sometimes they laughed over local news headlines and food truck drama. Other times, he read to her from the baby book she kept on the table, her voice tired, feet swollen, fingers tracing her belly as he read aloud about brain development and womb bonding. Colden had never pictured himself in this role, but now he couldn't imagine being anywhere else. Naima didn't trust easily, but she paid attention. She noticed how he never tried to fix things. When she complained about swollen ankles, he didn't tell her what to do. He just brought a low stool the next time he came. When she was too tired to cook, he didn't suggest takeout. He chopped vegetables and followed her recipe, without ego. One evening, when her back locked up mid-laugh, he didn't hover or ask if she was okay. He simply helped her stand, walked her to the couch, and handed her a heating pad before she even asked. That's when she realized this wasn't performance, it was presence, and that mattered more than anything. On the 6th Sunday since they reconnected, Naima invited him to the local CO to op event. It wasn't fancy, just a small gathering of women, doulas, mothers, and volunteers celebrating birth equity and healthy parenting. She didn't introduce Colden as the father. She didn't introduce him at all. She let him exist in her space as a helper, a listener, a man who held her purse when she stepped up to greet someone, who poured water for elders and carried folding chairs to the car. He didn't flinch, didn't look out of place. He was just there. And when one of the women leaned in and said, "That your man?" Naima smiled softly and replied, "He's learning to be present." It was the truest thing she'd ever said. Later that night, as they sat on her small balcony eating honey-laced cornbread and drinking cold herbal tea, Naima finally asked him, "What were you really afraid of that night?" Colden exhaled slowly. Of needing someone. Why? Because when you need someone, they can leave. And then you're left explaining to yourself why you weren't enough. Naima looked down. "I've had that feeling too." He turned to her. "I didn't think you'd understand. People always think strength comes from not feeling. But it doesn't," she said. "It comes from surviving the feeling and choosing anyway." Choosing what? Choosing to stay open. Colden stared at her. Then, slowly, reached for her hand. She didn't pull away, but she didn't squeeze back. She just let it rest there, neutral, present, honest. And that was enough. The next morning, Naima woke up to a text. "Can I take you to the doctor's appointment next week? If not, I understand. But I'd like to go." She stared at it for a long moment, then replied, "Yes. But meet me there. Don't pick me up." His response came quickly. "Absolutely. See you at 10:45. I'll wait in the hallway until they call your name." She smiled. That was the thing about Colden now. He didn't try to earn space. He waited to be given it. At the appointment, Colden arrived early. Dressed in a charcoal hoodie and clean jeans, he sat quietly in the waiting room, flipping through a parenting magazine he barely processed. When Naima walked in, she wore a blue maxi dress and white sneakers. Her hair was wrapped in a soft headband. Her glow was unmissable. They greeted each other simply, then sat together in the corner, shoulders not quite touching. When the nurse called her name, Colden stood up. Naima hesitated, then nodded toward the door. "You can come in." His chest lifted slightly. Thank you. Inside, the ultrasound screen flickered on. Naima lay back, hands resting on her stomach. Colden sat beside her, still as stone. The image appeared, clearer than ever. The technician smiled. There she is. Colden didn't speak. He couldn't, because something cracked open in him. There she was, their daughter, tiny, growing, real. Naima turned slightly to glance at him. His eyes were wet. She didn't say anything, just reached out, gently, and covered his hand with hers. This time, she squeezed, and Colden held on. Colden didn't remember the drive home. His hands had been steady on the wheel, his eyes on the road, but his mind was still in that dark room, with the low hum of the machine and the flickering black and white image of something, someone. That made everything else in his world look artificial. He had seen her, his daughter, not as an abstract idea or responsibility, but as a real wriggling miracle with a profile that already looked like Naima's when she laughed, and he had cried, not loudly, not theatrically, just quiet tears that surprised him as they fell, because no one had ever made him feel that open, that exposed. Not even Elaine, not even his mother, whose love came with rules and rejections before he could even name them. That night, Colden sat at his kitchen counter in silence, the same silence that had once protected him. Now it felt empty, because the sound he wanted most wasn't in this penthouse. It was Naima's voice. It was the rhythm of her feet across hardwood, the sound of her stirring something on the stove, the muffled hum of her singing to herself when she didn't know anyone was listening. She wasn't here, and he wasn't entitled to want that. But he did. Naima wasn't sure what surprised her more, that he cried, or that he didn't try to explain it away afterward. He didn't use the moment to guilt her, didn't ask to talk, didn't try to process it out loud like the men she'd dated before who mistook proximity for permission. He just held her hand, softly, steadily. Then he let go when the tech left the room and said, "You've got this. I'll be outside. No assumptions, no performance, just presence." That night, Naima cooked one of her comfort meals, roasted garlic chickpeas over coconut rice, with a citrusy kale salad. Halfway through plating it, she paused, then reached for a second plate, and texted Colden, "Dinner's ready if you want to come by. You'll need to take your shoes off at the door." He arrived 30 minutes later, did exactly as instructed, took his shoes off, placed them neatly by the door, and greeted her without a word. She handed him a plate. No substitutions. He smiled. "I wouldn't dare." They sat at the table, one she'd refinished herself over 3 weekends the year before, and ate like people who had finally earned the right to share silence again. Colden didn't speak until after they cleared their plates and moved to the couch. "I don't know what I'm doing," he admitted. Naima raised an eyebrow. "With what?" "With being this. Being here. Trying to learn how to father before I've even figured out how to be steady." Naima looked at him, long and slow. "You're not a father because you show up once. You're one because you show up again, and again, and again." Colden nodded. "That's what I want to do." Naima's voice dropped. "Then don't make promises." He blinked. "What?" "Just make patterns." They didn't kiss that night, didn't even touch beyond the occasional brush of a hand when reaching for the teacups she'd poured. But something shifted. She leaned back into the couch, and for the first time in a long time, let her body rest without bracing. He stayed a while. Not too long. Just long enough. The next week, Colden rearranged his schedule. His assistant Trey raised an eyebrow when Colden blocked out every Wednesday morning going forward. "No meetings before noon," Colden said. "Any reason?" Colden nodded once. "I've got something more important to be present for." Every Wednesday, Colden picked up groceries for Naima. He didn't ask what she needed. He observed. If she tossed out bruised apples one week, he bought fresher ones the next. If she grumbled about water retention, he brought cucumber and parsley. He downloaded pregnancy nutrition guides and started asking better questions at the co-op. He didn't try to fix her pregnancy experience. He just lightened the parts he could reach. Her belly had made it difficult. The laces felt miles away. Colden knelt down silently and tied them for her. Didn't speak, didn't make a show of it, just handled it, then helped her up. Naima looked at him carefully. "You keep doing that," she said. "What?" "Solving the problems I don't voice." Colden hesitated. "Do you want me to stop?" Naima shook her head. "No, I want you to keep doing it. But not so I'll love you." He met her eyes. "I know." She stepped closer. "I'm not a reward, and she's not a test. I know that too." They stood like that for a moment. No rush, no chase. Just two people figuring out how to build something that might last. Naima had always been the strong one, the one who made the spreadsheet before a crisis, the one who packed the overnight bag before contractions, the one who could walk into any kitchen, size up the chaos, and bring order before the soup even boiled. But lately, strength looked different. It looked like resting her head without apology. It looked like letting someone else stir the pot. And maybe it looked like Colden showing up. Again, and again, and again. Thursday evening, they met at the co-op again. Naima had a table set up with a few of her recipes printed on handouts. Simple, healthy meals for expecting mothers. Colden stood beside her, silent but present. He didn't try to lead, didn't draw attention. He handed out recipe cards, refilled water pitchers, smiled at grandmas and high-fived toddlers. One woman leaned over and whispered, "Yours?" Naima smiled. "No, he's his own. But he's here." The woman nodded. "That's rare. Don't take it for granted." Naima didn't. But she wasn't idolizing it either, because showing up was the beginning, not the whole story. After the event, they walked slowly to Naima's car. Colden carried the folding sign. Naima moved carefully, her hand resting just above her belly. "You good?" he asked. "Just tired. You want me to drive you home?" She looked at him. "I'll drive, but you can ride along." He nodded. They drove in silence. Not the heavy kind, the calm kind, the kind where nothing needs to be proven. At her apartment, Naima opened the door, stepped inside, then turned back. "You want to stay for tea?" Colden blinked once, surprised. "Yeah, I do." She smiled. "Then take your shoes off." He did, without hesitation. She brewed red raspberry leaf tea while he leaned against the counter. He didn't ask questions, just watched her move, slow, graceful, sure. When she handed him a mug, their fingers touched briefly. Naima looked at him. "What happens if I say I'm not ready to name this?" Colden sipped. "Then we don't name it. And if I need time, I'll be here." She stared into her tea. "I don't want to fall into something just because it feels easier than being alone." He nodded. "I'm not asking you to fall. I'm just asking you to keep the door unlocked." Naima's lips parted slightly, but she didn't speak. Instead, she moved to the couch. He followed. They sat, quietly, until she finally said, "You still see silence as lonely." Colden looked at her with something softer than before. "No. Now I see it as earned." Over the next few weeks, their rhythm continued. Wednesdays, he came by with groceries and foot rubs. Fridays, he brought her new books on childbirth, parenting, and even poetry. Sundays, she cooked, unless she was too tired, in which case he made grilled cheese and warm pear slices with honey. He never called her mine. She never called him love. But one night, when he left after tucking a folded baby blanket back into her laundry basket, she said, "Thank you for making space." Colden turned at the door. "You don't have to thank me for that." "I know," she said. "But I wanted to." Naima's cousin Amaya finally got involved. It was bound to happen. "So," she said one afternoon, while organizing baby shower supplies, "you and the mystery man. What's the situation?" Naima smiled. "There's no situation." Amaya raised a brow. "He's been to 4 prenatal visits." He asked. "I let him, and you're letting him back into your life. You trust him now." Naima paused. "I'm learning to." "That man ghosted you." "I know. And now he's showing up and acting right." Yes. Amaya crossed her arms. You in love with him? Naima didn't answer right away. Then she said, I'm in love with how I feel about myself around him now. That's enough for now. Amaya blinked. Okay, that's actually deep. I'll shut up. Naima grinned. Please do. Colden didn't push. Not once. Even when he caught himself reaching for her hand during long walks. Even when he wanted to kiss her forehead when she laughed mid-sentence. He waited. Not to win her, but to match her, step for step. One night, Naima fell asleep on the couch, head tilted, one hand resting. On her belly, the other gripping a baby sock she'd been sewing. Colden didn't dare move her. He covered her with the throw blanket, sat beside her quietly, and just watched, not possessively, not longingly, just with reverence, because for the first time in his life, he wasn't waiting for the moment to turn into something else. He was just in it, and it was enough. The package arrived on a rainy Tuesday. A flat, rectangular box marked handcrafted maple crib, assembly required. Naima blinked at it sitting outside her door. No note, no receipt, just her name in neat black lettering. She didn't have to guess. Only one person knew she had planned to shop for a crib that week. She texted him. You dropped something off. Colden replied almost immediately. I did. Not sure if you'll want to keep it, but I thought of her when I saw it. Naima stared at the phone. She hadn't asked for it. He hadn't run it by her, but part of her heart fluttered anyway. Still, she replied, I'm not a project, and she's not a checklist. Don't build things before we decide what they mean. Colden didn't reply right away. Then, you're right. I'll be by to pick it up if you'd prefer. No pressure. Naima exhaled. Her fingers hovered over her screen before she typed. You can come by, but I'm building it. Not you. If you're here, you're watching. That's it. That night, he showed up wearing a grey hoodie and jeans. No tools in hand, just quiet respect on his face. She opened the door, gestured toward the box in the living room and said, Hope you have patience. I've never built a crib before. Colden smiled. I've never watched someone build one. Naima side-eyed him. You're good. I'm learning. For the next 3 hours, they worked in silence. She read the manual aloud, sorted bolts, lined up wood panels on the rug. He passed her parts, held up corners when she needed them, but never took over, not once. At one point, she dropped a screw and muttered, This baby better sleep like a dream after this. Colden chuckled. If she's anything like you, she'll sleep 5 hours and then organize the toys alphabetically. Naima smirked. You say that like it's a bad thing. It's not. It's terrifying, but impressive. She tried not to smile, but failed. When the crib finally stood upright, clean lines, sturdy frame, soft edges, Naima stepped back and folded her arms. That's not bad, she said. Colden stayed quiet for a moment, then said, Her name's going to be the first thing I whisper in that crib. Naima looked over. You picked one? I've been thinking about it. Let's hear it. He stepped closer. What about Mireya? It means miracle. Naima's throat tightened. She hadn't told him. She hadn't shared the note she'd written weeks ago with that same name circled at the top. How did you? I don't know. It just felt right. She stared at him, and for the first time, she let him see the crack in her voice. I wrote that name down in my journal a month ago. Colden's lips parted. Then maybe she chose it. They stood there a while, not touching, not planning, just standing at the edge of something that no longer felt temporary. A few minutes later, Naima folded the instruction manual and turned toward the kitchen. You want ginger tea? Colden nodded. Please. As she moved to the sink, he glanced down at the crib and ran his fingers along the wood. Then he reached into his back pocket and pulled out a small fabric pouch. He knelt beside the crib, loosened the drawstring, and placed a tiny carved wood charm under. The mattress base, a family heirloom his grandmother had sent him when he was 12. Something she said he should only pass forward when he found peace worth protecting. He hadn't known what that meant until now. Naima came back with 2 mugs. Colden stood up as if nothing had happened. But she noticed his shift. Gentle, quiet, but grounded. "What'd you do?" He blinked. "What do you mean? You've got that face, like you left something behind." He raised one brow. "You okay with that?" She shrugged. "Depends on what it was." "A wish." Naima studied him. "Next time, ask before leaving pieces of yourself behind." He nodded. "I will." She took a sip. "Still, Mireya's going to have a nice story to grow into." Later that night, Colden lingered by the door. "You want me to head out?" he asked. Naima nodded. "Yeah. I need to think." He didn't push. "Okay." He put on his shoes slowly. Just before leaving, he turned. "I meant what I said. You don't have to let me be a partner, but let me be a father. I'll take it slow. But I'm not letting her grow up wondering where I was." Naima looked at him. Firm. Calm. Good, because she won't have to wonder. "But if you disappear again, don't bother coming back." His jaw clenched. Not in offense, in understanding. "I won't disappear." Naima opened the door wider. "I'll hold you to that." And he stepped out, leaving peace behind instead of pressure. 3 days passed before Naima texted again. She didn't ask for anything. She didn't reference the crib or his last words at the door. She just sent, "She kicks when I eat sweet potatoes. Thought you'd want to know." Colden stared at the message for several seconds, then replied, "Let me know when you're eating them again. I'll bring dessert." Naima didn't respond, but that night, when he showed up, she'd already set out 2 bowls and a tiny container of sweet mashed yams. They ate on the couch again. No music, just the sound of rain against the window. Halfway through the meal, Naima leaned back and rested her bowl on her belly. "She's active tonight." Colden looked up. "You think she's listening?" Naima nodded. "Babies learn rhythm early. They memorize tone, emotion, the way your body sounds when you speak with love or with tension." Colden set his fork down. "Then I'll be mindful of what I give her." Naima studied him. "Not just words. Energy too." "I know." She smiled faintly. "You're doing better." "I'm learning slower than I'd like, but learning." Colden nodded. That mattered more than anything. Later, he helped her organize baby supplies. They arranged diapers, wipes, nursing pads, and bottles in little bins with handwritten labels. She explained what each item was for. He asked questions when he needed to, but mostly listened. When they got to the baby monitor, she paused. "I never thought I'd need one. I figured I'd always be in the room. Do you still feel that way?" Naima shook her head. "I'm starting to trust that someone else can be there when I'm not." Colden didn't move, but something shifted in his chest. She was saying more than just about a monitor, and he heard it. Before he left, she gave him something small, a photo print of the ultrasound image, carefully slipped into a matte black frame. He took it slowly. "This is for me." "It's not for decor," she said. "It's so you remember she's not a maybe." Colden met her eyes. "She never was." Naima nodded. "Then keep her close." He didn't say anything more. He just held the frame like it was sacred. That weekend, Colden cleared the top shelf of his office bookshelf. He placed the framed photo there. Not behind glass, not hidden. Right where he could see her. Where she'd remind him every day who he was becoming. Naima's cousin Amaya came over to help prep for the shower. They folded pink napkins into baby booties, tied ribbons around mason jars, stuffed goodie bags. At one point, Amaya glanced toward the crib in the corner and said, "He really picked that." Naima shrugged. "He brought it. I built it. That's kind of romantic." "No, that's kind of respectful." Amaya narrowed her eyes. "You love him." Naima didn't deny it. She didn't confirm it either. "I trust what he's showing me more than what he's saying. And right now, that's enough." Amaya smirked. "I'll accept that for now. But if he slips, I'll handle it." "You always do." Naima looked at the crib. "But this time, I don't want to handle it alone." Colden didn't miss the baby shower. He didn't hover, didn't stand out. He arrived late, helped Amaya carry folding chairs from the car, then stayed in the back during the games. Naima noticed. She didn't need him to perform. She needed him to blend. And he did. When the cake came out, lavender frosting piped with welcome Mireya, Colden stayed out of the photo circle, until Naima pulled him in. Just one picture. Him behind her, not touching. Just smiling with his eyes as she held her belly, like it carried everything sacred in her life. Because it did. That night, when he dropped her off, she turned to him at the doorway. Thank you. For what? For knowing when to step in and when to fall back. He replied quietly. I wasn't always good at that. Naima touched his hand. Brief, but intentional. You're better than you were. And not because of me. Because you wanted to be. Colden's voice lowered. I want to be someone our daughter never doubts. Naima blinked slowly. Then keep showing her that. Starting now. If this chapter touched you, hit the like button and subscribe for more real healing love stories. Now tell us in the comments, would you trust someone again? Not because they promised you change, but because they showed you. Sometimes, forgiveness is not about forgetting the past. It's about recognizing who's finally willing to grow in the present. Naima didn't expect to feel scared. She'd been calm for most of the pregnancy, focused, clear. But on that Monday morning, something was off. She woke to a tightening in her lower back. Not pain exactly, but pressure. By midday, her feet were swollen, her breath was short, and her mood shifted into something she couldn't name. It wasn't hormones. It wasn't drama. It was something deeper, older. A reminder that even with all her planning, her independence, her grace, this was still happening inside a body that had limits. And the weight of doing it alone, even by choice, started to feel heavier. Colden was in the middle of a video call when he saw her name flash on his screen. Naima, one new text. He paused the call. Didn't hesitate. Can you come? Not an emergency. But I don't want to be alone today. 7 words. That was all it took. He didn't ask for details. Didn't make excuses. He ended the meeting, grabbed his keys, and was out the door in 5 minutes. When she opened the door, she didn't say a word. Just turned and walked back toward the couch. Colden followed quietly. Naima sat with a sigh and leaned into the armrest, her eyes heavy, her legs tucked to the side. I don't know what's wrong, she said. I just feel off. Okay, I haven't eaten much today. Let me fix something. She didn't respond, which meant yes. He moved toward the kitchen like he belonged there. Because he knew now that belonging didn't come from being invited in, it came from staying when things got quiet. 20 minutes later, he brought her a plate. Soft scrambled eggs, sweet potatoes, and lightly toasted oat bread with almond butter. She took a few bites, slowly. Colden sat on the floor in front of the couch, facing her. Legs crossed. No pressure in his posture. Just availability. You think something's wrong with the baby? He asked gently. Naima shook her head. No, she's moving. My body's just tired. Colden nodded. Naima looked at him, her eyes clearer now. You're the first man I've ever asked to come when I was low. Colden's breath caught. Why me? Because you're the first one who hasn't asked for more than I'm ready to give. He swallowed. I'm not going to break that. She leaned her head back, staring at the ceiling. I want you here. I am here, but I also want to not need you. You don't. Naima turned to him. Then why do I feel like I do? Colden exhaled. Maybe needing isn't weakness. Maybe it's just trust with no cushion. That made her go still, because she knew he wasn't saying it for effect. He was saying it because it was the first time he'd believed it. She reached for his hand, held it tighter than before, then closed her eyes, not to sleep, but to rest, with him still there, still steady, still silent. For the next few hours, he stayed by her side. He responded to emails from the corner chair, charged her phone, massaged her shoulders when she stirred from a nap, refilled her water without asking. She didn't need entertainment or advice. She needed presence, and Colden gave it without condition. At sundown, she finally spoke again. "I think I panicked. It's okay. I started wondering if I'd built this whole structure to survive alone, and now I don't know how to adjust." "You don't have to adjust all at once." "I know." She sat up straighter. "But if you're going to be here, really be here, then you need to know that some days I will push you away. I figured, and it won't be personal." "I know." Naima looked at him. Long, clear, direct. "If you want a title, I don't have one yet." "I don't need one," he replied. "But I want a role, even if it's quiet, even if it's never public." She stared at him for a while, then said, "You're not a visitor anymore." Colden nodded once, then picked up the folded laundry from the edge of the couch and started placing it into drawers like he'd always belonged there. That night, Naima wrote in her journal, "Today I let someone see the part of me I usually cover up with jokes, tea, and confidence." And he didn't flinch. Maybe love isn't loud. Maybe it's quiet enough to still be there when nothing else is. Tuesday came with wind and grey skies, the kind of weather that made the city move slower. But Naima was already up. She'd slept better. And the reason wasn't the tea or the pillow between her knees. It was the man who had folded her laundry the day before, taken the trash out without asking, and stayed on the other side of the couch until she fell asleep. She hadn't asked for it, but she hadn't had to. She texted Colden that morning. "Groceries are low. If you're free, meet me at the market." He replied within 3 minutes, already halfway there. They met at the co-op like it was a routine they never scheduled. Colden was holding a woven basket when she arrived, already filled with kale, bananas, ginger, and steel-cut oats. Naima reached in and held up a jar. "You know this is the expensive almond butter, right?" He raised a brow. "Only the best for your cravings." She placed it back carefully. "Let's get two." Colden smirked. "Big week, big baby." They moved slowly through the aisles, discussing ripeness, reading labels, trading recipe ideas. It didn't feel like a couple shopping. It felt like a partnership in motion, not defined, not perfect, but aligned. Back at her apartment, Naima unpacked the bags while Colden wiped down the counters. He moved like someone who belonged there, not out of assumption, but out of rhythm. They made a meal together: roasted chickpeas, turmeric rice, cucumber salad with lemon. Naima cooked, Colden cleaned. Then they ate on the floor beside the crib, legs crossed, plates on cushions. No music, just the occasional clink of utensils and the sound of comfort. "I never planned for this," Naima said quietly. "For what?" "For a man who doesn't try to take over everything." Colden looked at her. "I used to think I had to." "What changed?" "You," he said. "You never asked me to perform. You just expected me to be present." Naima took another bite, chewed slowly, then asked, "And that was enough for you?" It was the first time I felt like I didn't have to earn love by fixing something. Naima looked at him fully now. "You're still learning what love even looks like, huh?" Colden nodded once. "And I'm okay with that." That night, he stayed late again. Not because she needed him to, because the energy was light, safe. She was organizing her hospital bag. Colden helped fold the newborn onesies, placing each one into color-coded pouches Naima had labeled "First Day, Going Home," and "Extra in Case." He laughed as he held up a tiny pair of socks. "She's going to lose one of these in the first 20 minutes. Naima grinned. "I have extras." "Of course you do." They packed everything into a small roller bag. Then Naima sat down slowly on the edge of the bed, rubbing her belly. "She's almost here." Colden sat beside her, not too close. "You scared?" "A little." He waited. "What about?" Naima exhaled. "About what I'll be like when I'm sleep-deprived. What if I resent people? What if I shut down?" Colden leaned in, just a bit. "You're allowed to break down. You're allowed to be human. I'll hold the line when you need to fall apart." Naima didn't cry, but her shoulders softened, and that said enough. Before he left, he asked a quiet question at the door. Can I keep something here? Naima blinked. What? Nothing big, just something of mine. So when I'm not here, a piece of me still is. She looked at him carefully. What is it? He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small wooden token. Weathered edges, smooth surface. I used to carry this during hard decisions. It reminds me of the version of myself I'm trying to become. Naima held out her hand. He placed it there. She turned it over, felt the weight of it, then nodded. I'll find it a spot. That night, she placed it on the windowsill beside her prenatal vitamins. So, when she took care of herself, she'd see it. The next morning, Colden didn't come over, but he texted, "Good morning. Hope she's letting you rest today. If not, let me know, and I'll drop off a miracle." Naima replied, "You mean pineapple?" "Always." She smiled, set her phone down, and whispered, "You're doing better." Not for him, for herself. Because sometimes the only way to know if someone belongs in your life is to watch how they handle the door you didn't close. The pain came on quietly. Naima was slicing apples in the kitchen when it tightened, low and deep, like a pull from inside her spine. She paused, breathed, set the knife down. It passed. She told herself it was just her body warming up. She was nearly full term. Her doula had warned her these false alarms might happen, but 10 minutes later, it returned. Stronger, longer. Colden was working from his home office when his phone buzzed. "Naima, I think it's starting, not panicking, but I'm timing them now. I'll keep you posted." He didn't hesitate. He grabbed his keys and responded, "I'm on my way. No pressure, just nearby." By the time he arrived, Naima was sitting on her yoga ball, breathing slow and steady. Her hospital bag was already by the door, her hair pulled up in a loose bun, her robe tied neatly. She didn't look afraid, but her hand trembled when she took his. "You sure you're okay with this?" she asked. Colden stepped inside and closed the door. "I'm not leaving." That wasn't the question. He looked her straight in the eyes. "No, I'm not okay," in the calm, collected way. "I'm terrified, but I want to be here, every minute of this, if you'll let me." Naima gave a small nod, then leaned her forehead into his chest. They timed the contractions together. At first, they came every 15 minutes. Colden read them aloud from a pregnancy app, tracking each wave with calm attention. He offered sips of water, carried her from the ball to the couch, massaged her lower back when her face started to tense. Naima gripped his wrist at one point and said, "Don't hover. I'm here, not hovering." "Good. Because if you start panicking, I'll throw this water bottle at your face." Colden smiled. Noted. By mid-afternoon, things intensified. Naima began humming through the contractions. Her doula, Amina, arrived and immediately took over, guiding her breathing, applying pressure to her hips and keeping her focused. Colden stayed on the sidelines. He watched her, amazed. Naima was fierce, focused. There was pain in her face, yes, but there was also power. He'd never seen someone look so strong while breaking down and building back up with every breath. Hours passed. The contractions came closer. Naima gripped the sink, whispering prayers. Amina timed, soothed, repositioned her through each wave. Colden, still near, offered what he could. When Amina nodded, Colden helped Naima into the car and they headed to the birthing center. It was almost evening. The sky was turning gold behind layers of cloud. At the center, things moved quickly. Naima was admitted. Her progress checked. Her room prepared. She asked for soft music. The same playlist she'd created weeks ago for this exact moment. Instrumentals, jazz, gentle vocals. Colden sat in the corner, quiet, present, holding the things she couldn't. Her bag, her birth plan, her fear. As things got more intense, Naima's voice cracked. Amina rubbed her back. Colden stepped forward. "Naima," he said gently, "I'm here." She turned her face toward him, tears in her eyes. "This hurts. I know. I want to do this. You are doing it. She breathed deeply, bracing against the next wave, then whispered, "Don't leave the room." "I won't. Not even if I scream. I'll stay, and not because you feel guilty." Colden moved closer. "Because I love you. And because you're letting me." At 2:13 a.m., Naima let out the final cry, half sob, half roar. And then it stopped. The pain, the tension, the fear, and in its place, another sound. A small, sharp wail. Alive, strong, familiar. Mireia. They handed her over, tiny and pink, to Naima's arms. Colden stood beside her, silent tears running down his face. Naima stared down at the baby, then looked up at him. "You want to hold her?" Colden hesitated. "You sure? She's yours too." He took her gently, terrified. Her weight was light, but her presence was heavy. He held Mireia like she might vanish, and for the first time in his life, Colden Vale felt completely undone, not by pressure, not by expectation, but by love that came with no transaction attached. Just truth. Naima watched him, not just the way he held the baby, but the way his entire body softened. She saw something shift behind his eyes, and for the first time, she whispered, "You're already doing it. You're being her father." Colden looked up, and with a voice rough from emotion said, "Only because you gave me the chance." They sat in the soft light of the recovery room. No more words, just the three of them, breathing in a new beginning. The room was still. Naima rested with one arm curled around Mireia, her other hand gently tucked under her cheek. She hadn't spoken in almost an hour. She didn't need to. Colden sat beside her, not touching, not even shifting in his chair. He watched both of them like they were a living answer to a question he'd asked years ago but never dared to hope would be answered. He didn't know what time it was, didn't care. The world had shrunk down to one room, one woman, one girl wrapped in a blanket with pink stars and the softest breath Colden had ever heard. The nurse came in softly to check on Naima. Vitals steady, blood pressure normal, recovery healthy so far. The baby had latched well, feeding had begun without complications. Everything was good, simple, clean, ordinary, in the most extraordinary way. Naima stirred a little after the nurse left. Her voice was raspy. "You're still here. I told you I would be." She looked at him, clear-eyed, exhausted, and rooted in something deeper than emotion. "You know I don't believe in grand moments," she said. "I know. I believe in patterns." "So do I." Naima blinked slowly. "Then keep this one going." Colden nodded. "I intend to." She handed Mireia over slowly. Colden reached out with careful hands. His movements were more confident now, but still reverent. He settled her in the crook of his arm. The tiny weight of her felt natural. "Earned. She looks like you," he said quietly. "She's got your stubborn mouth," Naima replied, smiling faintly. "That mouth might get her grounded. Then you can be the one to lecture her. I'll write a speech." Naima rolled her eyes. "Please don't." They sat in silence for a while again, the kind that didn't ask to be filled. Colden rocked the baby gently. Naima watched the two of them with a gaze that held more trust than she'd ever offered anyone. Then she said, "I don't want to rush us into a family label." Colden didn't flinch. "I didn't come for a label. I came for her. For you. For us, if that happens." Naima nodded. "I don't want a CO parent who disappears when it gets inconvenient. You won't get one. And I don't want to wonder where you are when she's up at 2 a.m. You won't have to." Naima hesitated. "Then we'll see." "That's fair." The nurse returned a while later and suggested Colden head home to rest. Naima looked at him. He stood, but didn't walk away. "I'll leave if you ask me to," he said softly. "But if it's up to me, I'd rather stay until morning." Naima blinked at him, then turned to the nurse. "Is there a chair he can rest in?" The nurse smiled. "I'll bring a recliner." At 3:45 a.m., Naima and Mireia were asleep. Colden sat back in the recliner beside them, Mireya's photo card resting on his chest. He whispered quietly to the sleeping baby, "You don't know me yet, but I'm going to keep showing up until you do." Then he closed his eyes. Not because he was tired, but because, for the first time in years, he wasn't afraid of what tomorrow might ask of him. Naima stood in the nursery, holding Mireya against her chest as the baby slept, cheek against her shoulder. Colden was assembling the last drawer of the dresser, kneeling on the floor, sweat on his brow, sleeves pushed up. "You sure this thing is safe?" he grumbled. Naima grinned. "That's the same company that made the crib." He paused. "So, yes, it's safe. But only if I don't mess it up." "You'd better not. I'll take a picture of it as evidence when I'm done." She glanced down at Mireya. "You hear that, baby girl? Daddy's trying to impress you already." Colden froze slightly at the word. She hadn't said it before. Not like that. Not intentionally. She noticed his pause, but didn't take it back, and he didn't question it. He just smiled to himself and kept working. That night, Colden offered to stay. Naima didn't say yes, but she didn't say no either. So he stayed. He helped change her first diaper disaster. He held her while Naima took her first long post-birth shower. He burped her through 2 crying fits. And when Naima dozed off on the couch during a 1 a.m. feeding, he didn't move her. He just covered them both with a soft blanket and sat nearby, in the quiet, in the dark, in something that looked a lot like home. The priest had left. The string quartet had packed up their instruments. The guests had dispersed, murmuring in shock, confusion, and awe. Corbin stood outside the cathedral. Steps, still in his tuxedo, no boutonniere on his lapel. It had fallen when he rushed down the aisle toward Zariah. He hadn't chased her far. She didn't run. She simply waited by the edge of the reflecting pool across the street from the church, arms wrapped around herself. The late afternoon sun turned the water gold, and a breeze caught the veil she'd placed in her hair for Amira's sake. "You didn't have to come," she said as he approached. "I had to," he replied. Zariah turned to face him, calm. "Is she okay?" Corbin nodded. "She's in the back, with my mother. But she knows it's over." Zariah nodded, her jaw tight. "You told her?" "No," he admitted. "You did. When you walked through that door, you made the truth impossible to ignore." They sat on the marble edge of the fountain. No performance, no audience, just 2 people who had lived too many years in silence. "I waited for you," he said, eyes on the ripples. "And I waited for you to come find me," she said softly. Corbin pulled something from his inner pocket. It wasn't a ring. It wasn't a legal paper. It was a folded letter. The envelope was weathered, corners soft from time and fingers. "I wrote this the day after you left," he said. "I never sent it. I didn't know where to send it. But I kept it. I've opened it every year on our anniversary." Zariah reached for it, but paused. "Read it." His voice trembled at the start, but he steadied. "Zariah, you left without goodbye. But I know I gave you the reasons. I didn't protect you from her, my mother. I didn't defend your name when they whispered. I failed to make our home yours. And still, every morning, I miss your laugh in the kitchen, your voice behind the shower curtain, your curls on my pillow. I miss the fight we never finished. I miss the apology I never gave. I love you. I never stopped." She wiped her face quickly. Corbin tucked the letter back into his jacket. "That wasn't a proposal," he said. "But I have one." He stood and held out his hand. "Let's not marry for them, or for the paper. Let's rebuild something they can't take." Zariah looked up at him. "I don't want to be your secret. Not again." "You won't be," he said. "There's a press van out front. My assistant's on standby. They'll hear the truth from my lips, not gossip." She paused. "And your mother?" He smiled faintly. "She's in the back room learning that manipulation only works until love grows up." Zariah stood. Her palm met his. "Then let's not return to what was. Let's create what should have been." And in that quiet place, away from applause or expectations, they kissed, not as a grand gesture, but as a soft agreement, a beginning, The next morning, the headlines weren't about a wedding scandal. They were about a reunion. CEO leaves fiancé at altar, reunites with long-lost wife who stunned the room. Corbyn didn't hide. He made a brief statement from his office balcony with Zariah at his side. Amira resigned from her position that week and moved on without drama. It wasn't the smear campaign Zariah feared, it was closure. But the real story wasn't in the press. It was in their home. Corbyn returned to the house they once shared and spent the next months reshaping it. Zariah didn't move in immediately. They dated, again. They talked without silence, fought without walking away, and spent Sundays in bookstores and brunches. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. One afternoon, nearly a year after the non-wedding, Zariah stood on their sunlit patio in Santa Barbara, barefoot, holding a small gift box in her hand. Corbyn walked out with coffee and smiled. "What's the occasion?" She handed him the box. He opened it slowly, confused, then looked up sharply. Inside was a white stick, 2 pink lines. His face shifted from shock to hope. "Are you?" She nodded. "Not 1, 2. He sank to his knees, wrapping his arms around her waist. "Zariah, I'm going to do this right this time." "No," she whispered. "We are." The twins were born in early spring, a boy and girl, named after his grandmother and her brother, and their wedding wasn't in a cathedral but under a magnolia tree, with no guests except the children playing in the background. It wasn't about proving anything anymore. They were done performing for the world. This time, the altar stood in their own backyard, and this time, they didn't walk away. Naima stirred the lentils gently, the aroma of cumin and bay leaves rising with the steam. Colden had taken Mireia to the park, giving her a couple hours of peace. It was strange, this new life. No agency schedules, no hiding. Just her, a child who looked like both of them, and a man trying every day to learn what presents looked like. She wiped her hands on her apron and leaned against the counter. Her phone buzzed. A text from Colden. She's obsessed with pigeons. "I'm being out-talked by a one-toothed dictator." Naima smiled, but the softness didn't fully reach her eyes. Colden had been consistent, more than she expected. He never pushed, never crossed lines. When he kissed her forehead before leaving, he never let it linger. When he held Mireia, his eyes melted. When he looked at Naima, he blinked like he didn't trust what he saw. But still, she waited. For the moment he'd pull away, for the silence that might return, for the price of letting her heart believe again. The door creaked open. Colden stepped in, holding Mireia like she was made of crystal. Her small fingers clutched the collar of his sweatshirt. His eyes searched for Naima first. She took her daughter into her arms. Mireia squealed and tugged at her curls. "I think she's part conductor," Colden said, rubbing his shoulder. "She doesn't walk. She commands." Naima chuckled. "She gets that from you." Colden tilted his head. "Me? I'm obedient. I go where I'm told." He said it playfully, but she heard something else behind it, something softer. Naima turned to serve the food instead of responding. Dinner was quiet. Mireia babbled between spoonfuls of rice and carrots. Colden barely looked at his plate, though he ate everything. Naima watched him. "You okay?" she asked. He nodded slowly. "Yeah, I just keep thinking about how easy it is to forget what I used to consider normal. Meetings, reports, being unreachable. That used to feel like purpose. Now, I'd rather be learning how to fold a stroller." Naima smiled. "You're getting better at it." "I still pinch my hand in the lock every time." "That's the price of fatherhood," she teased. But he didn't laugh this time. His eyes didn't leave her. "You've changed everything I thought I knew about myself." She held his gaze for a second too long, then turned to clean Mireia's tray. Later that night, Colden offered to do the dishes. Naima stepped into the small balcony to clear her mind. The lights of Seattle flickered across the bay. She wrapped a blanket around her shoulders, her hand resting over her. Stomach, a habit that never went away, even after Mireia's birth. Behind her, the kitchen water shut off. She expected Colden to join her. He didn't. Instead, he sat in the living room, flipping through one of Mireya's board books, his focus oddly intense. She watched him from the doorway. "You know," she said gently, "you don't have to keep proving yourself." He looked up, confused. "What do you mean?" "I mean, you're here. You show up. Every single day. You've already done more than I ever thought you would." Colden stood, slowly walking toward her. "That's not what I'm trying to prove." She waited. "I'm not trying to convince you I'm a good father," he continued. "I'm trying to prove that I can be a man who doesn't run, who doesn't ruin good things just because they scare him." Naima's breath caught. He stepped closer. "You weren't a fling. That night changed everything, and I was too broken to admit it. But now? Now I know what I want." She swallowed. Her heart thudded. "I want to wake up with the sound of Mireya's little yell. I want to fall asleep to the smell of your stew burning because we got distracted talking about our day. I want—" "Colden," she interrupted, voice trembling. "Don't say this if you're not ready. I'm saying it because I am." Her eyes glistened, but her voice stayed steady. "Then take it slow. Let's build something that doesn't crack under weight." He nodded, and for the first time he leaned in, not to kiss her, but to rest his forehead against hers. No rush, no pressure, just presence. Later that week, Naima was invited to speak at a local culinary panel for young black female chefs. It was a small event, hosted by a community group she used to volunteer with. She hadn't planned on going, but Colden encouraged her. "You built this," he said. "Go celebrate it." He watched Mireya while she spoke. He paced with the stroller, even changed a diaper on a park bench. Naima didn't need to check on them. She knew they'd be okay. When she returned that evening, she found Colden lying on the playmat, Mireya curled against his chest, both asleep. Naima covered them with a blanket and stood there, breath shallow. How did this happen? How did one night become a life? She picked up her phone, opened her notes app, and wrote something for herself. "Love isn't loud, it's consistent." I see that now. Naima woke to the soft shuffle of footsteps. It was still dark. The baby monitor showed Mireya breathing gently, curled in her crib. But the noise wasn't hers. Colden's silhouette moved in the kitchen. She checked the clock, 4:12 a.m. He hadn't come to bed. She slipped on her robe and padded out quietly. He was seated at the counter, elbows on the island, a single white envelope in his hands. She didn't say anything. Colden looked up slowly. His eyes were bloodshot. Naima's chest tightened. "What is it?" He held out the envelope. "It came yesterday." I hadn't opened it. Naima took it, confused. Her name was on it. No return address. She opened it carefully. Inside was a letter from the CEO of the hotel Colden once co-owned. A formal notice. The last remaining asset in his name had been transferred out of his control. His mother had pushed through final legal steps. He no longer had anything left from the empire he'd built before Mireya. She set the letter down. "Why didn't you tell me?" He laughed softly, defeated, not bitter. "Because I needed to see if I was still standing without it. Are you?" He looked at her. "I've never stood straighter." Naima walked around the island and sat beside him. "I can't offer you a penthouse," he said. "I can't promise private jets or designer labels. But I can promise you morning dishes, shared grocery lists, toddler, tantrums, and showing up every day until you're tired of me trying." She reached for his hand. "I don't want a penthouse," she whispered. "I want peace. And I want someone who knows how to keep it." His fingers tightened around hers. "I know what love looks like now, Naima. It's not a weekend on the coast or a check that fixes a mess. It's staying when it's boring. It's listening when it's uncomfortable. It's laughing when there's nothing perfect about the day." Tears slipped down her cheek. "I want you to ask me," she whispered. His brows furrowed. She turned her hand in his and looked him in the eye. "I want you to ask me to stay. Not because we have a child, not because we share space. Ask me because you want me. Just me." Colden pushed the stool back slowly. He stood. He stepped in front of her, dropped to one knee, and took both her hands. "I want you," he said softly. "Naima Joran. Not for one night, not for comfort, for always. Stay with me, grow with me, wake up next to me. Let me keep learning you. Let me keep earning you." She bent down and pressed her forehead to his. "I was always yours," she whispered. They didn't rush a wedding. They moved into a small home just outside the city, modest, warm, with a backyard for Mireia to run in. Naima launched her own meal delivery business for new moms. She called it Root Plus Rise. Word spread quickly. Her dishes weren't just delicious, they felt healing. Colden started teaching financial literacy workshops at a local rec center. Quietly. No PR, no cameras. Just second chances for people who'd been overlooked, like he once was. On Mireia's second birthday, the backyard was full of balloons, mismatched, folding chairs, and too many toddlers in superhero capes. Naima stood by the picnic table, frosting cupcakes with one hand and holding her daughter on her hip with the other. Colden stepped behind her, kissed her shoulder, and handed her a cold drink. They stood together, sweaty, tired, happy. Later that night, when Mireia had crashed in a pile of stuffed animals, and the house was finally quiet, Colden led Naima to the living room. No lights, just the glow of the kitchen nightlight behind them. He handed her a small velvet box. "No pressure," he whispered. She opened it. Inside was a ring, simple, elegant, a soft gold band with one marquise-cut stone in the center. No flash, no drama. Just love. "I'd marry you in a t-shirt on a Wednesday," he said. "But if you want a weekend, I'll find one." Naima touched the ring, but didn't put it on. Instead, she leaned into his chest, eyes closed, lips resting near his collarbone. "Yes." He pulled her closer. That night, their kisses deepened, their laughter softened, their rhythm found a new pulse. But it wasn't lust that filled the air, it was safety. They made love with no shadows between them, no fear of leaving, no fear of being left. In the quiet after, Naima whispered, "You still make me feel like that first night." Colden kissed her forehead. "Except now, I know your favorite tea, and I have the honor of watching you mother our child." She smiled into his chest. A few weeks later, Naima sat in the bathroom staring at a test. This time, she didn't cry from shock. She cried from gratitude. She walked out slowly, Mireia playing on the floor beside the couch. Colden looked up. One look at Naima's face, and he stood. She nodded. He blinked, then let out a breathless laugh. Another. She held up 2 fingers. His knees nearly gave. Naima rushed to steady him. "Twins?" She nodded, smiling through the tears. He sat back, dazed, laughing. Mireia toddled over, clutching a banana and yelling, "Mine!" Colden scooped her up. "Yours. Always yours." Then he looked back at Naima. "And you. Forever." She walked to him slowly, sat beside him, and took his hand, placing it gently over her belly. It was full. So was her heart. "Thank you for walking this journey with us. From one unexpected night to a new beginning full of life and love." Naima and Colden's story reminds us that broken people can still build beautiful things if they choose to show up with truth and effort. If this story moved you, we'd love to hear your favorite moment in the comments. Tap that like button if you believe healing is possible. Subscribe if you know that love is more than chemistry. It's commitment. And don't forget to share this story with someone who needs to believe in second chances again. We'll see you in the next story. Mr. Charles Stories.